Hey everybody, National Firearms Coalition here, doing our interview with Ryan Kelley for Governor of Michigan, 50th Governor of Michigan. Alongside here, we have Mike Vasquez from No Soundbites Allowed. This is a joint interview with Ryan Kelley, discussing some questions regarding our formal endorsement of his candidacy and why we did so. I'll go ahead and get started out real quick. One of the questions that I'd really like to ask is, how do you feel about H.R. 7910 and further pushing of the red flag law agenda?
Yeah, we've seen nothing but continuation from the left trying to push more gun control. Anytime you see whether it's a school shooting, which is very tragic, or anything else that they can use to try to clamp down on legal gun ownership, it seems to be their narrative these days. So, these continued push for these red flag laws and these new bills, we know unconstitutional. They're unnecessary. They're aimed at trying to just limit the Second Amendment, control, firearms in our country, and then, ultimately, we know that they want to disarm the American citizens, right? That's the ultimate goal, and these are just little stepping stones getting to there. And so, it's another embarrassment of a bill that's being proposed here in America, and it's sad to see so many Republicans that are getting behind this as well.
Okay. I'll start off now. For people who are not familiar with the format, Zach will be handling a lot of the Second Amendment and gun issues, and I'll be dealing with more of a general topic line. For those who are not familiar, No Soundbites Allowed. We've been political commentators for 15 years, and I've interviewed candidates since 2008 of every political party from everywhere from the local to the federal presidential level. So, Mr. Kelley, in looking over your financials, and this is coming from Transparency USA, we see that you've received so far about $98,000 in donations, and one of the biggest expenses that you have at this time is $12,000 that were spent on a Cynthia Burley, but that expense is not described in what she does or what that purpose was, which brought attention to us. So I would ask you, what exactly does Cynthia Burley do for the campaign for that unnoted expense?
Okay, interesting question there. So Cynthia, she worked for the campaign very early on, and she worked in a management role for my campaign. So that expense that you see there was for salary that was paid to her while she was employed with the campaign.
Okay, thank you for that.
All right, moving on quick. So we hear how you feel about red flag laws. How do you, and I'm going to use the word interpret because I use the word interpret referring to the Second Amendment a lot. What is your interpretation of the Second Amendment? Do you believe that it is something that should be changed, amended, or like a living body, or do you believe that it is an absolute, the Constitution is absolute along with the Second Amendment?
Yeah, it's a great question. It is not if you will, a living document, right? What it's stated in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, they are absolutes. There are ways, Article 5, to amend the Constitution, to add amendments, but those that we find in the Bill of Rights, those are God-given rights that are endowed by our Creator. And so with the Second Amendment, it absolutely is, it states what it states, and it means what it means, and it's absolute. And we see the states, for example, have their own constitutions and also provisions inside their state constitutions, which will either reflect or expand upon the Second Amendment. So in Michigan, for example, we have the Article 1, Section 6 of our Michigan Constitution that states that you have the right to self-defense and the right to keep and bear arms. So I'm not familiar with too many of the other state constitutions in regard to their clauses in that aspect, but that's our Michigan Constitution as well. and very important as well as the Second Amendment.
Thank you for that.
Mr. Kelley, obviously, when anyone is looking at this from outside of Michigan, the number one thing that they'll see, and this has been promoted by most of the major news media, is that you had a recent arrest by the FBI in relation to the January 6th protests. In that, you have been charged with 4 misdemeanors. Now, understanding that this is an ongoing investigation and there are some legal limitations in what you can say, to the best of your ability, can you explain why you went to the Capitol, and if anything occurred besides you standing on the steps of the Capitol, which seems to be the only evidence that has been presented by the FBI at this time?
Yeah. So without getting into too many details that we don't even fully understand yet, because it's so early in the case of, what positions are being taken. Yes, there was 4 misdemeanor charges, and going way back to even January, February of 2021, I never denied the fact that I was in Washington, D.C., right? When it's an account on Twitter, right, started talking about it, and the news media asked me right from the very beginning, I never denied the fact of being there, exercising my First Amendment, and being there, protesting the 2020 election results, the process in which we all went through in order to get to where we ultimately are at now, I guess you can say. But, I joined in support of President Trump, in support of the First Amendment to protest the government. And, the continued aiming to silence America First conservatives such as myself, and especially somebody like me that's been very vocal, all throughout 2020, holding the protests throughout Michigan, and, excuse me, being a voice for freedom, being a voice for our Constitution, standing up for our God-given rights. And then as I've moved into running for governor, gained a lot of momentum. And, interesting enough, Michael, I'll go back to your question there about the money. We've done substantially better here in these last couple of months, especially. But the funny thing is that I've raised the least amount of money of all the candidates, and I've spent the least amount of money of all the candidates. Yet the polls are showing that I'm the front runner in the race. The polls show that I have the most momentum, and that is from a lot of hard work and connecting with the people and having a strong message that is resonating with people. And it's, it's substantially grown since I was arrested on June 9th. The support around the nation has been incredible. The support around the state of Michigan is overwhelming. And it's, I think as time goes on, we're going to see kind of how all these things unfold. This is an attempt to try to silence me. This is an attempt to try to intimidate me, my family, my supporters, and try to get me to back out. But we're full speed ahead. We're going full speed ahead into the primary 37 days from now. We aim to win the primary. November 8th, we aim to make Gretchen Whitmer a one-term governor, win the governor's seat, and then make some real big changes here in the state of Michigan, going the other direction, not just a different direction. We're headed in a bad way here in the state of Michigan.
And since you had mentioned it, I do want to admit for the record, it is correct that you have you've raised and more importantly spent less than any other candidate. You have spent about $69,000 in expenditures at this time. You are, according to Real Clear Politics, leading all of the other Republicans in the race at this time, based on 3 polls that have been done, all of them recent, and you are at about 15 to 17%, depending on each poll, leading all other candidates in the race. For the record, I did want to clarify, you are correct in everything you've stated. So thank you for that.
That's accurate. And, it's a huge blessing. And it's been a lot of hard work just connecting with people. I've met at so many people's house for little events that they're doing, right? Hey, we have a group of patriots getting together. Will you stop by? I've stopped by a countless number of those places, and I've built a grassroots army of people that are behind me spreading the word. I'm not chasing the dollars. I'm not chasing the money to say, oh, I have to, in order to compete, raise, more money than the other candidates. And, think that that's the deciding factor, because obviously it's not. And it is important that you raise money for campaigns, because things aren't free as you go through, right? There's advertising costs, there's printing costs, there's, staff costs in some instances. There are things you have to pay for, but this whole idea of chasing the money and whoever has the most money is the winner, we have to move past that idea, and we have to find the ones that are willing to fight for the people, and the ones that have the interests of the people. They have public service in mind, not self-service, and which is how we've gotten us in this place here with self-serving politicians. And now it's time to change and go the other direction.
Understand. Thank you for that.
Very good answer. And actually, are you guys getting feedback from me? Is that from me?
Just for a moment it was, yes. But it's all right
Okay.
now.
Doing good.
I just want to point out that one of the reasons that we did decide to endorse you was because of your participation in exercising of the First Amendment right to protest the government. I feel that it's very important that people know that you're out there fighting for not only your constituents, but at that point you're fighting for an entire nation. So I personally, and as NFC, we take a lot of appreciation in that, and it kind of leads into my next question. Why did you decide to publicly exercise your Second Amendment rights to stand guard to protect a Civil War commemorative statue during the BLM and Antifa riots and conflicts?
Destroying history is a Marxist movement in order to bring in about communism. And we know that the national theme was to destroy American history. They were tearing down statues all over the country. And here in Allendale, which is 20 minutes or so from Grand Rapids, where there was a huge riot down there and lighting cop cars on fire. They did millions of dollars in damage to property all in the area there. They moved their little efforts down here to Allendale to try to destroy this Civil War statue. And we said that we're not going to allow them to come here and destroy our city, destroy the history that is represented in that statue and that garden where they had it in the park. And it's important that we remember our history, and especially with the Civil War, it's important that we remember that the nation was so divided, and they fought a war to ultimately determine that slavery would not be tolerated in this nation. And that's something that should be celebrated. That's something that should be remembered. Those lessons throughout that part of our history is something that every person should learn about. And destroying that statue would have represented destroying that part of American history. So, the Marxist movement, the radical left's ideologies of coming in and wanting to destroy our republic and replace it with whatever, twisted ideas that they have. That was kind of the basis behind it. I mean, I wasn't running for governor at that time. I wasn't even thinking about running for public office at that time. I had a 3 to 4 day old baby at the time, right? My 5th child was born. And so I'm saying to myself, looking back, I'm like, why would I have went and put myself in that position? A few days into having a brand new baby and, knowing that it could be, confrontational and hostile, but it was the right thing to do. And I just did the right thing, I guess, and it turned out to be something that has propelled the campaign forward, because again, I feel that we need people that by their actions do the right things, by their actions are standing up for the people, by their actions they are standing up for our state, for our country. And it's easy to make a website, put on some talking points of, oh, this is what I stand for, or here's what I like best. If you elect me, this is what I'll do, right? We've all heard that one how many times, right? You get the little mailer, you see the little ad running on whatever. I'm at the point now where it's like, I want to know what you're doing. I want to know what you've done, right? If you're not fighting now, don't tell me you're going to fight later, right? I mean, yes, there always is a fight later, and we need to talk about those things. But if the audio and video isn't matching up, right? Here's what you're saying, but you're not doing that, right? What makes me think you're going to do it later? You probably won't.
That's a very good answer. In our endorsement letter, we actually pointed out both what Mr. Vasquez just touched on and what we just touched on. The integrity and the values that you show in American history and preserving American history, as well as not being afraid to publicly exercise the Second Amendment right, was real big aspects on us. And that's something that everybody should really take notice of when they're at the polling booths. Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. Mr. Kelley, by the way, do you mind if I call you Ryan?
Please do, yes.
Okay. Ryan, I know many Americans, especially those in Michigan, have had many questions about Governor Whitmer in regard to her use of executive powers throughout 2020 and since that time. Perhaps one of the most egregious examples of this that led to many questions to this day was her copying of the actions and policies of now disgraced former Governor Andrew Cuomo in regard to the pandemic and nursing homes and patients in those nursing homes, our elderly citizens. Some have stated, and we do know for a fact, that hundreds, if not thousands, may have died as a consequence of that. Some even allege that it could be as large as 4,000 in the state of Michigan. Let me ask you, if you are elected, will you pursue an investigation to determine how many individuals were affected by that use of executive power by Governor Whitmer? And will you disclose this information to the public in a report or some other format?
Yeah, there's, I believe, 3 other governors beyond those 2 that had
Yes.
the same type of action. It was Newsom out in California. Was it Murphy?
Yes.
It was down in New Jersey, and then the other one was
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Wolf.
Mhm.
Yeah, Wolf. Yeah, down in Pennsylvania. So yeah, very, very sad time for so many families there. And I've spoke with many of those families that have been negatively impacted, obviously, from those decisions. They lost loved ones, and the question is how many people, that were left kind of in the dark all alone that had died because of that too. They were never necessarily exposed to somebody with COVID-19, but they thought, why is my family not coming? Why is no one paying attention to me? How many died of a broken heart, if you will, right? Because they thought that they were abandoned by their family. And so, to address your question, the short answer is yes. That absolutely needs to be further investigated to understand why those decisions were made. We know this as well in the state of Michigan. This is also fact. In July of 2020, one of the state senators introduced a bill that would have stopped, moving forward, all COVID-19 positive patients from being admitted into nursing homes. Stopped it right now, no more. And that made it to her desk and she vetoed it. And the question is knowing that putting those people in nursing homes, the death count substantially rose, and then seeing that there was a bill that would have stopped it that was vetoed. Okay, is there now malicious intent with that? What exactly is happening in this scenario? Why would we continue that, knowing that the death count went up, and now we find out that it was misrepresented, underreported? There's a lot of things that really surround that have a lot of questions that need answered. And so, yes, we will look into some of those emails. We'll look into some of that situation. I know Matthew DePerno, who is running for Attorney General, he is actually our nominee for the state. He won the state convention delegate race and is the nominee to go up against Dana Nessel. He will also be supporting me in that aspect. And really, it's going to come from his office, from the Attorney General's office. And, he's going to have a lot of support from me to be behind them 100% in an investigation to determine why those actions were done, what could have been done to prevent those, and if there's any charges that need to follow to hold her accountable for those decisions, which, thinking is probably likely.
All right. And I thank you for that answer on that. Thank you very much.
So leading into my next question, we've had a couple of followers from the Michigan area that have been in our comment threads asking about non-violent felons and having their rights restored. So one of the topics that we have discussed a lot in the 2A communities in the last, well, probably since the 1960s. But one of the things that we've been addressing kind of with the state candidates that we discuss stuff with is where they stand on any type of reform to the 1960s. I believe it was 68. I might be wrong. But the Gun Act for felons and the restrictions set forth against them. Would you agree or disagree that there should be any type of reform to that law that states that once a felon, a non-violent felon, let me rephrase myself, once a non-violent felon has basically served their debt to society, done their parole or probation, community service and everything, that they should at some point be reinstated those rights after the fact?
I agree with that.
You can go ahead, Mike. he answered it perfectly fine in 3 words.
Yeah, that's the easy one. Let's switch up and talk about the economy. Obviously, this is something that is a massive issue. In fact, it is the #1 issue in the nation, no matter what state you look at or the nation as a whole. Specifically, looking at the Michigan economy at this time, perhaps the one thing that most people look at is the unemployment rate. Currently, Michigan has a 4.3% unemployment rate. The nation has 3.6. That, of course, does not tell the whole story. The bigger issue is, as inflation is increasing, as we are seeing a stagnation on unemployment, can you tell what are the 3 main policies at this moment? And of course, it may change as we go further down the line. But at this moment, what are the 3 policies that you are looking to institute as governor that will affect the Michigan economy positively?
Big issue in Michigan right now with the economy is energy costs. And we're all feeling that all across the country. Inflation at the gas pump. Michigan now has rolling blackouts coming to a city and a house near you, right? Where we've just shut down another nuclear power plant here in the state of Michigan. We've seen now where Consumers Energy has made the announcement that they want to go coal-free by 2025. That's just right around the corner. And, we have, current administration, Gretchen Whitmer, Nestle is on board. They want to shut down Line 5, which moves a lot of our petroleum products and other products all throughout the entire state of Michigan. So one of the main things that I aim to do here as governor is take control of our nuclear energy program here by becoming an agreement state. And that's where we will be able to control our own nuclear energy program and develop a robust nuclear energy program in the state of Michigan. We see that places like Ford, they chose to move their manufacturing facility down to Tennessee. What was the main reason? Energy costs. They wouldn't have reliable electricity for the high demand that they would have needed. And I'm thinking to myself, what year do we live in where we can't provide electricity in an abundant form to the residents of our state, to the businesses of our state? And the COO of DTE Energy recently made the statement that, well, just turn your thermostats up and you won't have to worry about losing your power. And I'm thinking to myself, that's your solution? Turn your air conditioners off and you won't have to worry about your air conditioner going out? So controlling our nuclear energy program, building a robust nuclear energy program, focusing on all the different forms of energy are important. I do think industrial wind turbines are a waste of our time, though. I do believe in solar panels. There's value to be had there. And keeping Line 5 open for those petroleum products to move is important. As governor, I will encourage and incentivize drilling Michigan-based oil. We're the 17th largest producer of oil in the nation. Now, that's not Texas or anything like that, but we can drill more Michigan-based oil, create those petroleum products here, provide diesel relief to our farmers, which can in turn help to lower food costs, provide diesel relief to our truckers, which in turn can help reduce food costs and other costs of doing business here in the state of Michigan, provide relief at the pump for those here in Michigan that are driving around and going to their jobs, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's hard right now for people to say, okay, I have to get to work. What am I cutting out in order to get to work? There's a lot of people in that boat. Removing the unemployment from individuals that refuse to return to go to work, that's going to be very important as well. And I would also like to see a cap with our property taxes. Our property taxes have continued to rise with an inflated economy, right? The value of the property in the market goes up, and so the tax increases follow with that. And I'm a big champion of property rights, and I would like to see us eliminate property taxes in the state of Michigan and tax other ways of you buy, you pay. I think that's a great way to do it there. So many of our elderly lose their houses because they are on a fixed income. Property taxes continue to rise. And so, ultimately they end up losing their house because they can't pay for it. So there's a lot of components there. And I know I brought in some different angles of, how these implications would change some things. But I'm going to go back to the beginning, and I'm going to say the number one thing now is energy costs here for businesses in the state of Michigan. We're going to attract people and attract companies to our state. We have to have reliable energy. We have to be as energy independent as possible. And with electricity, we absolutely can. I mean, nuclear energy is the way to go.
Okay. I thank you for that. Thank you for those answers.
Very good answers, by the way. So one of the hot topic questions that I would like to ask is your proposal on better securing schools. With all of the attacks on the Second Amendment because of the lack of security in schools, how do you feel about the Gun-Free School Zones of America, or Gun-Free School Zones Act of 1990? And how do you feel that we could better secure our schools and keep our children and students safer?
Gun-free zones obviously don't work, right? If that's not obvious now to every single person, then you're not paying attention, obviously. This goes back to the question you asked earlier with gun control, right? Talking about the red flag laws. And I mentioned the Democrats always just go right after aiming to restrict guns more, right? Well, let's just put more restrictions on guns. I was asked the question by a reporter, and they said, Mr. Kelley, let me ask you a question. As governor, what would you do in order to create gun laws that will keep our students safe? And I said, all right, I'm with you. We have to protect our students. Let me ask you a question, talking to the reporter. I said, tell me what gun laws we can pass that criminals are going to follow. Just kind of let that linger there for a second, right? And she looks at me, she goes, well, I don't know. I said, I know you don't know, because the answer is none. They're going to break any of the laws that you pass, which is the entire point behind the whole situation. So this idea of wanting to defend the Second Amendment when we talk about these gun laws and whatnot, we need to go on offense instead of taking a defensive position, because the question we need to ask is, why do Democrats never come up with real solutions to protect our students? Why is there never anything where we talk about how we're going to protect the students and make the schools more safe? It's always just restrict guns. So I propose that we have single point access in our schools so that we know where the students are entering. If you go out the other doors, they're exit only. And, you might have an alarm on these doors or something like that. So if during class, when during school hours and the doors open, and if somebody would let somebody slip in or something, an alarm goes off. we put metal detectors inside of the door frames so that as you're walking in and out of the schools, there's going to be an alarm that goes off if there's something alarming on someone, right? We allow our school staff members to carry if they want to. You don't force anyone to. You put them through a training, etc., all those things. But if a school staff member, not just teachers, I don't say just teachers because there's a whole variety of school staff members, right? And if they want to carry, they should be able to. And putting them through that training program would be important. And I think that we have. Oh, sorry, I just lost the point I was going to make there. So the school staff, trained school staff, that's important. The single point access, the metal detectors at the doors, armed veterans, for example, right? There's so many veterans out there that would take a lot of purpose in their life by going and protecting students. So there's many different things that we can do that would actually secure the schools versus just going after restricting firearms, because we know that criminals don't follow gun laws anyway, right? So I think that those are things that we have to go on offensive about instead of just trying to defend our positions. And so those are the things that I've proposed, and I think that they're common sense things. One of the pushbacks that I've received from people is, well, wouldn't that militarize our schools? And the question is how many kids, this is a real question, how many kids go to the airport and they don't feel safe getting on the airplane nowadays? I'm going to say they go through the security checkpoints. None of them are freaked out. None of them are going, oh, the airport's all militarized, right? They're going to feel safer going through all of those things. Now, we don't have to get into the airport, TSA conversations or anything like that. But, having those things there and parents feeling more comfortable about sending their students there, I think that's the solution that we have to try, because it's obvious that gun-free zones aren't working out for us, right? And here's the other component that I believe that we need. Our students, our schools need to teach firearm safety. Our schools need to teach students starting at young ages how to operate and handle firearms so that they respect firearms, so that they know that, yes, firearms can be extremely dangerous if you don't use them properly. Right. But you know what else is extremely dangerous if I don't use it properly? Is my truck, right? Is a steak knife. It is a rock. I mean, David and Goliath, the story from the Bible, he did that with a rock, right? So, it's all about a moral compass, right? Mental health needs to be addressed. That's another topic there. I think that needs, there's early signs of somebody that's going to do school shootings. There's early warning signs that, hey, something's off, something's not right, and that needs to be addressed. But we have to look at the common sense side of things. And, as conservatives, I think that we need to go on offense about pursuing these common sense solutions versus always just trying to be on the defense or try to defend the Second Amendment, or, we can't let the left run the show anymore with this stuff. We need to be unapologetically American.
Very well said. Definitely like all the answers that you gave to that question. Real quick, before I let Mike go on, you did mention one thing in there that is a very large argument from anybody that's on the left. And I would kind of like to know how you would go about handling it. If you talk to somebody on the left and you convince them that doing this type of stuff to a school is secure and safe, and I do it all the time because I've been where school districts have got private police forces, double door style airlock systems where you have to be buzzed in, exit only exits except for one point of entry. I've been there, and the parents feel safe about dropping their kids off, and nobody mentions that it looks like a prison or a military base. The biggest argument that I get from people on the left that I do convince to make that exception is budgeting. Everybody thinks that it is so expensive that school board schools can't afford to do these types of implementations. How would you propose to get the schools funded to achieve this in a short manner of time without making it a long process.
Stop sending $50 billion at a time to Ukraine. Stop spending all our money foolishly overseas on ridiculous pet projects of a Congress that's not truly representing Americans. We have the money to get these things done. Protecting our students, if anybody on the left is advocating we need to protect our students, but then they say, oh, well, we don't want to allocate the money properly in order to keep them safe, right? That's all in itself a horrible viewpoint for them to take. There's so much wasteful spending in our budget. You know, for example, here in the state of Michigan, our enrollment is down in our public schools by a lot, tens of thousands. And we see that Gretchen Whitmer is proposing what she calls the largest investment in public education ever, a whopping $18.4 billion in the school aid fund. A big number, right? So we keep spending more, enrollment goes down, and outcomes of our students continue to drop on the nationwide scale system, right? We're not providing a quality education, yet we're spending and spending and spending and spending. I think with our schools especially, we need to look at a zero-based budget. I think we need to look for the entire state at a zero-based budget. I don't care what we spent last year. I want to know what are the things that we need to provide. What does that budget look like that we need to provide? Not what we spent last year in order to give a quality education this year and work that direction. And fund the things that need to be funded. Teachers need to be funded well. Teachers need to be supported, that they can, inside of their classroom, have control over the students, right? There's so many disciplinary problems with students. Teachers are not allowed to keep their classrooms orderly in a lot of ways because, oh, you're stepping over the line and interfering with students that are being disruptive. You know, that's a different talking point for a different question, I guess. But you know, as I continue down this path, being able to find those important things that this money needs to be spent on, right? And then cutting out the foolish programs, cutting out all of the DEI positions, right? Diversity, equity, and inclusion positions. We're paying millions of dollars to these people to put these ridiculous curriculums and these different programs in our schools that provide zero educational value, zero academic value. And we put the money towards the things that will provide a safe, secure academic education, focus on skilled trades, bring back skilled trades, teaching the American constitutional civics so that our students understand what our government is about, how our government operates, understands that we're a republic. We're not a democracy, right? We're a republic. And provide for that next generation the ability for all of us, regardless of skin color, national origin, what part of the state you live in, what your accent is, where your parents were born, like all that stuff needs to be pushed to the side and say, hey, those are all talking points, sure, right? But everyone deserves a quality education. Focus on the schools providing that for everyone.
Very good answer. Thank you for that. That was my last question that I had wrote down. So, Mike, if you want to go ahead and ask your next question.
Now, I know we may not have a lot of time, and I do want to, first of all, thank you, Ryan, for taking the time to speak with us. I know it's a very busy campaign. I know it's a very popular campaign. You have a lot of events to be at, so we do appreciate it. I do recommend to those who are watching this either live or afterwards to go to ryandkelley.com to look over your website to learn more about many of the issues you have spoken about, some of the reforms you have proposed in terms of creating and modifying legislation, in terms of elections and election reform going forward. But my final question, I believe, will be in reference to immigration. And I know many people don't think of Michigan when they think of immigration, especially when we're talking about the southern border. Specifically, the Biden-Harris administration has used Alma, Michigan, and the state of Michigan as a testing ground. It is where many young men have been taken. They've crossed the border by themselves without family members, an act that some would consider to be an act of child abuse. Those children have been taken from the southern border and deposited in Alma and other places around the country, but specifically in Michigan. Knowing that this has happened, and it seems to have encouraged additional others to come to the nation based on the 250,000 illegal immigrants coming into our country per month at this current moment. As governor, how would you address this issue, this testing ground that Michigan has become, and the immigration, the illegal immigration that is affecting the communities throughout all of Michigan?
Alma, Michigan, I'm very familiar with that story. I actually joined the community, the parents, the community members at a planning commission meeting.
Mhm.
Gosh, I forget what month it was, but it's been several months now.
I
Where
believe
Bethany
it's
Christian, March, yep,
I believe so.
yep. So there was a planning commission meeting, multiple ones actually, and they were determining to turn Bethany Christian Services wanted to take a Masonic lodge and change the zoning so that they could bring in illegal immigrant boys. I believe it was between 13 and 17 to have them housed there.
Yes.
And I'll tell you, a majority of the town was against it, myself included. I was there speaking out on behalf, with the community members that did not want to have the zoning change, did not want to have those illegal immigrants be moved there. And ultimately, the planning commission made the decision to not change the zoning, but then the city commission or the city council, whatever it was, they overrode the planning commission's decision and they allowed the change to happen anyway. And, I'm going to tie in a little something here and take a little jab here at Whitmer real quick, because she's a fraud, right? She's been plugging our state with fraud. B, she's also a copycat, because back in the beginning of my campaign, it was, I believe, March of 2021, maybe it was April 2021, I released my Michigan First policy agenda. So Michigan First was my thing, right?
Yes.
And it was kind of like the America First, right? But we're going to put Michigan first. We're going to put Michigan residents first. And so Gretchen Whitmer's kind of stole that line from me, right? That's what she tends to try to do. She sees a good idea, she tries to make it her own, but I'm calling her out on it, and I have multiple times. But she put out an email the other day about me talking about, January 6th and, Ryan Kelley this, and, we can't have extremists like this guy, blah, 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 all those things. And she writes down at the bottom of the email, she talks about, Gretchen Whitmer putting Michiganders first, is what she says, and chip in $5 now to win this toss-up race. So first of all, she knows it's a toss-up race. She knows that with Ryan Kelley being the Republican nominee here in the state of Michigan, she doesn't stand a chance to be reelected as governor here in the state of Michigan. So that's the first thing I take out of that. The second thing is she's using this whole Michigan first, right? Putting Michiganders first. Yet she's encouraging illegal immigration. She's tolerating illegal immigration in our state, which directly takes away from the Michigan citizens, ones that are struggling, that could use whether resources to help them, get to the next step, the businesses that have went out of business across the state of Michigan, so many things that, our resources for the state can focus on helping Michigan residents. And she chooses to side with, illegal immigrants bringing into our state. And so we need to deport illegal immigrants back to the country where they came from, right? We don't need to move them to Delaware. We don't need to move them to Washington, D.C. We need to deport them back to where they came from in the first place. There's a legal immigration process that needs to be followed. There's a legal immigration process that people that come into this country through that legal immigration process, they are patriotic, American, loving individuals. And those are the people that should be coming into our country. Those are the ones that we should be encouraging to be part of our state and our society, the ones that come through that process. And illegal immigration is the biggest slap in the face to those people. They put the time, effort, and energy to become a legal citizen. And Michigan's also a border state. We have Canada right across the bridge. And there's big problems there if we're not careful, because that's another point of entry into our state, another point of entry for things like fentanyl come into our state. We know Fentanyl is pouring across the southern border. Fentanyl deaths in the state of Michigan have rose by the thousands. And it continues to kill Michigan residents. So don't tell me you're putting Michiganders first when you're not stopping illegal immigration and cracking down on these things that continue to, plague our state, put us in a spot where we're using our resources to take care of people that have not come through the immigration process legally. And so I'm kind of carrying. You got the point there of where I'm going, right?
Yeah.
But I'm against illegal immigration, right? It's a disgrace to the ones that come through the process properly, and to all of us here in this country when we have a federal government that it's their job under Article 1, Section 8, Article 4, Section 4 of the U.S. Constitution to protect our border, have a legal immigration process, and make sure that that's being upheld throughout all of the nation. They're failing on that massively.
Okay. If I can squeeze in one real quick question, because it's pretty much a yes or no question.
Sure.
On February 1st of 2022, the Federal Election Commission, in addition to the U.S. Election Commission, made rule changes across the nation to allow paper ballots to be used in 2022 and going forward. I know that you have some issues with electronic ballots, to say the least. Do you support a transition back to paper ballots for Michigan if you were to be elected?
Yes.
Okay. No problem. Like I said, it's an easy one. That was yes or no.
If people want to go on my website there, they can see my 100-day plan. You'll be able to do a couple things. We got the Legal Defense Fund as well. That's on my website. So that's not part of the campaign. That is to have the Legal Defense Fund. If somebody's generous, wants to give to that, they can. But my 100-day plan is also there, and you can see the first 100 days of my administration, what we'll be focused on. Election integrity is part of that. The pandemic. We're talking about education, economy, the budget, the Second Amendment, bringing constitutional carry to the state of Michigan. So they can find the 100-day plan plus the Michigan First policies that are on the website there as well.
Absolutely.
I do got to say I am very impressed with your first 100-day plan agenda. It's probably one of the most American, I'll call it American. It's probably one of the most American 100-day plans out of all of the governor candidates that we have spoken to and looked at. So I do commend you on that very much so. That being said, RyanDKelley.com. Everybody can check out the website, make donations if you'd like to, check out his 100-day agenda, and just do a little bit of reading and research on his candidacy and a little bit of his background. National Firearms Coalition endorsed for his race as the 50th governor of Michigan. On that note, I've got nothing else to say, so if you guys would like to say anything as an exiting statement, feel free.
I just want to again extend my thanks to you, Ryan, for taking the time to answer the questions. I know some of them are a little uncommon, but we believe in being tough and fair and giving you the chance to answer questions so voters can make the best decision possible. I think that you've helped them to be able to do so. And again, my thanks for that.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Very good. Well, I appreciate the endorsement. It means a lot. Let's keep moving forward. We have a primary to win, and we have an incumbent governor to get out of Lansing and get a guy in there that can save our state and help bring freedom, liberty, prosperity back to our nation.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for your time, and you have a great night, and we will keep checking in on your race and keep promoting your campaign.
Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a great night.